welcome to the Silvers Connection. I am your host, Ernie Silvers. Today we are talking all things consulting. I have brought an expert to the house, personal friend of mine and cohort at Cal State San Bernardino, Professor Jackee McNitt Engles. Welcome, Jackee.
Thank you so much, Ernie. It's so great to be here.
Yeah, let me give a quick bio for Jackee because, again, I need to qualify her as the professional because she is the managing consultant at McNitt Engles Group. So she is a consultant for which we're going to talk about. She also teaches at the UCLA Anderson School of Business. She also does executive coaching there at the school. She's lead faculty for Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program. She also teaches with us at Cal State San Bernardino. So she's a busy person too. Let's get on with our topic today. Jackee, we're talking about consulting. Consulting is a profession that many folks look at. It's attractive. They want to become a consultant. How do you become a consultant, Jackee?
Yeah, that's an extraordinary question, Ernie.
Kind of large, right?
It's really, really big. And I guess the first question that I would probably put that back in somebody's court when they wanted to ask me how to be a consultant, and I would say, why do you want to be one?
Why would you like to do that? Yeah.
Yeah. What is it that intrigues you about this? Because there's a sense of glamour around it. People think that it's something, woo, really wonderful and excellent. And what I get to do now is to tell people what to do, right? That's what a consultant does, as opposed to me having to do things. I get to go tell people what to do. And of course, that's really not what a consultant does. But the road to being a consultant is paved with huge experiences and the ability to contribute something to another organization. So certainly an MBA is an extraordinary way to pave that road, but also actual experience in an organization is really important. I know a lot of my travel here started out at Wells Fargo. I was at B of A first and then at Wells Fargo, but Wells Fargo, I had the opportunity to really get into some really kind of meaningful pieces that were important to consulting when I was a part of acquisitions and mergers. So I launched with the very first in 50 years acquisition that Wells made with Crocker National Bank in the mid 80s, and was able to help kind of create how we approach that acquisition, especially in terms of managing the change and integrating people, and the communication that we did. And that was the experience that I took into my consulting realm. And I worked within an organization then as with a human capital consulting organization, Drake B. Moran, for several years. And then I also, of course, went out on my own and started my own business.
Because that's what you do, right? You work for somebody else and then you take your own show on the road.
That's right. Then you learn how to do it. You figure out, this is how this works. So this is terrific. Right. Consulting is a varied profession. There are lots of different kinds of consulting. So how you become a consultant kind of depends on what kind of consultant you want to be. So, sometimes the glamour roles that we're looking at are things like the strategy consultants, because people sometimes think about McKinsey or Bain or BCG and these big consulting agencies and how they go into these big corporations and learn all about them, and they give them strategy, and so they create these big roles. Well, if that's what you're interested in doing, there's a lot that you need to know about, right? So you're going to absolutely everything that you would learn in an MBA program, you're going to apply in strategy when you're helping an organization create a strategy that is usually focused on some kind of change. You walk into an organization, you take a look at what's going on there. They've usually called you because there's a problem, something that they need to do, and it seems to be overwhelming or over their heads, or something they haven't done before and they hope you have, so that you can kind of give them some insight. And the really cool skill that I think really good consultants have is the ability to make connections between seemingly disparate industries, disparate ideas, disparate concepts, and kind of molding them together to form a unique process or a unique path for a new organization, because they see this and they're taking their past experience, the concepts they've learned, the different kinds of things they know, and all of these pieces, and putting them together in a unique way for this particular organization and the unique problem that they have. It is extraordinarily creative. It's extraordinarily innovative. It's really fun if that's something that you really like to do. There's a sense of really making a huge contribution to somebody when you're able to pull all those things together. But it does require a lot of different kinds of experiences to draw on. And some of those experiences you're going to get in school. Some of those experiences you're going to get in an organization. And one of the big pieces that I tell people to prepare in order to prepare for, if you want to be a consultant, is to pay attention. Pay attention to what you're learning. How might this be used in different contexts? Pay attention to what you do in an organization. If you're really enjoying something that you're doing in an organization, some kind of a task or a function that you're working on, how might this be applied in different organizations in a similar way, so that you're thinking like that before you ever go into consulting, and you've got that going for you. But being able to kind of exercise that creative muscle in terms of making connections, thinking differently, and helping to see new paths and new directions, kind of seeing around corners is one of the ways I might talk about it. So, the problems aren't usually straight ahead, right? We don't usually get in trouble from things that spring up right in the path that we're on. We kind of anticipate those, but we get derailed because of things that come around the corner. So if you're a consultant, if you're the type of person who's able to see around corners based on indicators, because you're thinking differently, you're thinking about how does this apply differently here, there, and the other place, then you're able to see around the corner, and you're able to supply an insight, an idea, an application that might help somebody really prevent a derailment, or to kind of launch them into something new and creative and wonderful.
How does one get that experience? I mean, you can't just wake up one day and decide you want to be a consultant. I mean, you must, I'm imagining that one must first have some experience in an organization, or 2 or 3 or 10.
Yeah.
How do you do that? I mean,
well, and remember that what you do inside an organization is often what prepares you for working outside an organization. Okay. So that's being able to see what you're doing inside an organization, and to see how those things are applied, and being really conscious about what you're doing and how you're doing it. That is what prepares you. The other piece that prepares you is this MBA, actually working in the MBA and being conscious about how does this get applied. One of the things that I've noticed about students, and this is not unique to Cal State, this is not unique to any place, this is everywhere, is that students develop silos of concepts. Okay, this I learned in my finance class, so that's where that stays. All right, so that we learned that. Okay, I finished that, I got my A, and we're past that now. We're done. Okay, and they don't take it and actually work with it and apply it. And sometimes actually the most effective way to do that is, while you're learning it, consciously think about how you would do this in a real work environment. How are you going to apply this? That then helps makes the connections for the concepts. One of the things that I know at one of the classes, as you know, that I teach is the Culminating Business Project. And so these folks actually work as student consultants with some of the organizations that I've worked with for a long time. And they have wonderful experiences, but one of the things they often struggle with is the financial piece of this project, right? They don't want to, it's not going to cost anything. All it's going to be, they don't have to do it. This is really easy. All they have to do is this, and this, and this.
Magic wand.
Wave the magic wand, no cost involved, right? And they're not anticipating what kind of projection you might have in terms of benefit. Well, there's no reason at all to make any kind of a change and to change course or to do anything unless A, the cost is less, than the benefit. So if I can't figure that out, if I'm not able to offer that to a client, I'm not going to be worth much. Okay. I have to be able to present that to them. Not only that I have these innovative, wonderful ideas, but that they're actually going to be meaningful to the organization in terms of their profitability.
Right. There has to be value. You have to present value.
Yeah, you have to present value. So understanding that all of these pieces fit together. There's a reason why you have to go through all of these different classes in an MBA, because they all fit together. They're not siloed. And I think that's really the strength of the consultant, is the ability to see everything together, to integrate all of those pieces, and that experience that you get. And I know I have had students in the class that I have that have used the project that we've done as proof of experience in terms of consulting and their ability to do these kinds of things. And there's also, of course, ways to take a look at how you write a resume in order to demonstrate that you know how to do the kinds of things that a consulting organization might want you to do. So, and of course, there's lots of different choices if you're going to become a consultant. So, I went inside first and then went on my own and as an independent, and I love being on my own. I love the independence, and there's some real value in being inside an organization. It's also not easy. It's also not easy to land that consulting job, and it's really hard if you're looking at the big three. Okay, if you're looking at like McKinsey, Bain, and BCG, that's a high bar for anybody.
Right.
Okay? So and the interview process all by itself is a high bar. That's a really difficult process in consulting. It's a very different process from what you're going to find in other normal businesses and other businesses.
Is there a normal business these days? I don't know.
I don't think so. We don't have anything. Normal is a state of mind at this point in time.
Yeah, it's just the environment we live in today. Yeah.
It is true.
What is the difference between a business coach and a business consultant?
Okay, so a coach or executive coach, there's a number of different kinds of coaches.
Okay.
You might have a leadership coach, an executive coach. You might have a life coach. I know people who do that. You might have a career coach, for instance. There's just a lot of different kinds of there's a wellness coach specialty that's out there that's really interesting and pretty cool. But the coaching is a whole different piece from consulting.
Okay.
I think the best way, there's an analogy that I heard not too long ago that I really, really liked about the difference between the two. But imagine you hired somebody to teach you to ride a bicycle.
Okay.
The consultant would ride the bicycle and write a manual telling you exactly how to ride the bicycle and give you the manual. Okay. That's a consultant. Okay. The coach puts you on the bike and helps you and guides you as you learn to ride the bike. So that is, I think, a really wonderful demonstration of the difference between the two. Yeah. Okay, so a coach helps you learn, and a consultant teaches or does it for you. Lots of times we have pair of hands, what we call pair of hands consulting. So those are people that actually implement and do the things for you as well. So there's a coach tells, or excuse me, and a consultant tells, and a coach asks. So a coach helps probe and help you understand exactly what it is that you want, and then helps you find the best way for you to get there. A consultant advises based on their own experience and what they know to be true.
So there's an expertise with a consultant, and they've been brought in for a specific reason, or at least an area that's specific to their expertise. Yeah. And isn't there a certain amount of questioning involved in consulting?
Absolutely.
Diagnosis.
Absolutely. Yeah, especially for the diagnostic.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's that whole diagnostic piece is all based on questions. Those questions are really truly answered. Important that I like to think about my definition for a question is that it's a way to organize our thinking about what we don't know. So that's what a good question does. It helps you organize your thinking.
Right.
So, and then the answers then give you, if your thinking is really organized well and what you don't know, then the answers actually give you something that's beneficial. Otherwise, if you haven't defined the problem well, you're not going to get very far. So, but then the consultant follows up with that after defining those diagnostics, with presenting you with a solution.
Right.
Okay. Whereas the consultant might have that same diagnostic process, or the coach might have that same diagnostic process, but then they lead you through creating the solution.
When is a consultant done? I mean, they walk in.
Yeah,
when do they walk away? Because
it depends on what they've been hired to do. Okay. So there are a number of different levels of consulting. You may have a consultant that's hired to just get information. Hello, I want do research for me and produce the research, and that's what they give you. Okay, you can have that. You might have a consultant that goes in, does the research, and then analyzes the problem, identifies what the problem was, and then identifies a solution, and then hands that over to you. Okay, and so you go buy. All right. You might have somebody who does all of those things and then steps in and helps you implement the solution. All right, so that could be. And then on top of that, there's more. You might have somebody who does all of that and then also helps you work with the culture of the organization in order to make sure that the culture of the organization is accepting of the solution, and helps that organization then adapt to the solution that's implemented. And as you can probably tell, how long the consulting engagement is dependent on how much of that process you're going to do.
Yeah, well, and so the obvious question for me is, well, is there an average? How long is the consultant around? 3 months, 6 months?
It depends on what they're asked to do. Yeah.
Right. So there is no answer to that question.
No, not really. Not a good one.
So based on what you're telling me, or at least my understanding, is that you need to have an area of expertise. You don't just walk into a business and start telling them how to fix things when you may not know how to do it yourself.
That's right. Although, I certainly have observed people who think they know. Even though they don't. So being honest with yourself, being able to really identify what it is your expertise is and what you are able to do, and proving to yourself, having that ability to say to yourself, oh, well, I've done this, so that would be able to then I could translate that to this. So your ability to sell yourself in these situations is really important. How does what you have done in the past apply to what you want to do now?
Is it how does a consultant, and we're talking a newbie now, how does a new person, a new entity build credibility? Because we all think we're fabulous. It's the old phrase, I know you think you're great, but who else thinks you're great?
Who else thinks you're great?
Who else thinks you're great?
Yeah. And a lot of that is, have you had a unique experience? Have you had some unique and interesting things that you have done that you can sell? All right. So for instance, I was really fortunate, didn't know it at the time, but I was really fortunate to go through 8 acquisitions and mergers with Wells Fargo. When I left Wells Fargo, I had that to sell.
Yeah.
And that was an extraordinary experience to sell. And I had, during the time I was at Wells Fargo, also participated in a number of professional organizations where I was able to speak about those particular experiences. So IABC, which is the International Association of Business Communicators, ASTD was at that point in that time. Now it's called ATD, which is the Association for Talent Development. And so I was able to give presentations and do that inside while I was still at Wells about what we were doing and how we were doing that. I had written an article or a journal piece for Benefits and Compensation journal, and that was published. I had done some things for some other kind of a little bit more popular kinds of magazines and stuff at the time. So those kinds of things enabled me then to leverage what I had in order to launch on my own. Okay, so I went into DBM for a period of time to kind of get a feel for what the industry was like, and then I did a huge amount of networking. And networking to ask people about what they needed and who they were and what kinds of things they needed, and talking about, they would then ask me about what I was going to do. And, you know, if this is something you know you want to do, if you know you want to launch an independent consulting practice, start networking, start talking to people who you think would want to use your services, and ask them about what they need.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that they're looking for? What are the most important qualities? If they were going to hire a consultant, what would they want to hire a consultant for? And talk to them a little bit about what they're looking for. And that way, then you know what you're going to provide.
So unique experience, to review real quick. You had unique experience, had that been there, done that, got the t-shirt sort of thing, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And then there's a level of establishing your competence, your expertise within a community, a business community, a business environment, where people start looking at you as, oh my goodness, that person knows what they're talking about. So you establish credibility. And then we get to the networking aspect. And I don't want to quite jump into that just yet. But so you have to qualify yourself, establish yourself as someone who is credible, believable, and has an expertise in a particular area. And secondly, I have to want you. I mean,
absolutely. And you know, and today, as opposed to the early 90s when I launched my consulting business, but today you've got all kinds of ways that are really easy to do that, because you can almost do something that's bloggish in LinkedIn. All right. And then that gets seen by everybody, right? So as many as you can, you know, have people share it, you know, that kind of thing. But think about what you might write about. So something, as you start working through this, you know, you want to be a consultant, you've started connecting concepts, you've started connecting things, you've started to have really interesting new ideas, write about them. You know, post that in LinkedIn, let people see them, have that, you know, let that be something that is beginning to propel who you are. It begins to identify who you are. And as you begin to do that, you'll begin to develop a reputation in that way. It will also appear then on your on your feed when in LinkedIn, where it says, you know, recent posts or recent articles, those kinds of things is in LinkedIn. And you want that to show things that you have put out there, as opposed to saying, nice job on somebody else's post, or, hey, that's great, I like that, you know, or, you know, oh, cool, you know, that kind of stuff, which is, you know, empty, really empty.
Now you're talking about using LinkedIn, the tool, for what it was designed for, as opposed to just another social media page. Exactly right. So that you are able to put out there your expertise, and that will, the other thing that it will do is that if recruiters are looking for people, they search by keyword. And when you have all of these things that you want to do, that you're talking about in your blogs, those keywords are going to pop up when recruiters are looking, and you may have more attention from passive recruiters that way. Right. Awesome. Let's talk about the skills required to be a consultant. What sort of skills, if you're making a list, you need to have these skills. What might that look like? Listening.
And number one is be a good listener. And I mean, really hear what people are saying. And when you're part of listening is questions, right? So when you should be, you know, there's a reason why you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? You should be listening twice as much as you talk. But as you're listening, as similarly to what you do so well, is to probe with additional questions. So what else would you say about that? What do you mean about that? Tell me more about that, so that you get deeper and deeper and deeper into what somebody is talking about. So listening and questioning, hugely important skill base. Okay, so those things are really important. And then the other things are very simply not simply, but a knowledge of all of the aspects of a business and what makes a business tick and run. And I also think that being current with research that's coming out is really, really, really important. This last year has been an extraordinary opportunity for that, because research is being done in real time on really extraordinary situations, right?
Yeah, trying to figure
So,
out what's going on. It's
oh yeah,
almost like the 24/7 news feed. You've got
it's
people trying to figure
amazing.
out.
It's amazing. And if you can tap into things like McKinsey has a white paper that is that you can subscribe to. So that'll come out a couple of times a week and you'll get all this fabulous information.
Mhm.
Harvard Business Review comes out with some really interesting things. And just think about your professional organizations, the areas where you might be most interested in. What kinds of things are they producing? There's lots of stuff out there, just a huge amount of things. The one thing that I'm following right now is this idea of the Great Resignation, and
Oh, I've heard about that.
that the idea of businesses' inability to adapt well to this change to the new normal is now creating what we're calling the Great Resignation, which is people resigning. And you're going to see it's a employee-driven market right now, which is a really interesting aspect of this. And it's driven by what is the work environment going to be like, and culture and work environment are becoming key. So there's some really that's my area, right? So I really love the kinds of things that are coming out. Keep aware of those things. You can't live in a vacuum. If you're going to be a consultant, you have to be aware of everything that people are talking about.
Can a consultant be too niched? I mean, you can't be too broad, right?
There are two ways of thinking about that. And I know people who believe that a niche is really important. Okay. And that's fine. If you have a niche and a specialty, and you have a certain industry that you work in, and you have a certain type of a person that you deal with, you're able to evolve a high level of competence with that particular industry and that particular person, a kind of person. I go the other way, and I would rather see a broad range, because that's where the best connections come from. What I have seen in my own practice, because I work with for-profit, nonprofit, Fortune 100, for small businesses, you name it, all across the spectrum, government organizations. I worked with all of those people, and what has happened that I have seen is that I'm able to take ideas and concepts that have worked in a certain way in one organization, and I see a problem in a different organization. I go, have you ever thought of this that was done over here? We could tweak it a little bit this way and do this. How about we try that? And the great news is they think I'm brilliant. And actually what it's done is I've just tapped the experience and made connections,
Right.
and those connections create innovation and creativity. And I think that's very powerful. Other people have, there's a deep learning that comes from a specific niche. I go the other way.
I would agree. I mean, as you described, if you do a specific industry, a specific customer, as long as there are multiple customers, maybe you're okay, but that's not usually the case.
Yeah, well, it can be. Depends on the industry and the type of customer you choose. If you're going to go, let's say you're going to go technology and you're going to look at product management, you're probably going to have a large range of customers there. Mm-hmm. So that's probably doable, but it really does narrow your focus.
Yeah, it does, and I agree with you. You can take ideas from other industries, other applications, and cross them and say, hey, how about this? This looks like that.
Really, yeah, I that's the fun for me. I like the innovation, the creativity, and the ability to make connections that maybe somebody else hadn't made.
Right. How about analysis? Is analysis key?
Oh, huge. Yeah, if your analysis isn't good, if you don't do that initial analysis at the beginning, especially that diagnostic, you're going to solve the wrong problem.
Okay. Talk a little bit about that. How do you do that? Obviously, asking questions.
Yeah, asking questions. There's a very simple one that I teach to my students. That is, it kind of gets you to the idea, but we call it root cause analysis. But the most simple approach to that is the 5 whys. you know, which is a really easy, cheap way to go about doing it. But if you do it right, it's also incredibly effective. So, you know, this is, you know, the example that I usually use is one, because I used to do a lot of work with customer service folks, and I'd have people come in and come to me and say, you know, I have this group of customer service reps that is really rude. You need to come in here and teach them how to be polite. And I'm going, oh, well, that's interesting. Why do you think they're rude? You know, and that why is a huge question at that point. Why do you think they're rude? And there could be a range of answers to that. So sometimes it would be, well, I think they're rude because they're not treated very well. Their supervisor is kind of a jerk. So they kind of respond to that, and they're not feeling very good. Okay, so then the issue may be the supervisor. Why do you think the supervisor's rude? What is that? What's going on with there? Well, he's underpaid, and he's, you know, and, you know, I don't think we hired very well. And, you know, there could be a lot of things there. Okay. So now we've got, okay, we're going to, maybe we take, it's about compensation. Maybe it's about training. Maybe it's about hiring. Are you hiring what's your hiring process look like? But if you can see, if you keep going into that why piece and keep going down, you're going to find out if all you did then was to go in and give courtesy training to your frontline representatives, you're not going to solve the problem.
No, because you would be treating a symptom and not the cause.
Yeah.
So to be clear, we're asking why 5 times. Why is that? Why is that? Not that
until 5 times, or until you really feel like there's no why left. That's really it. We've really got it. Okay. So that's the simplest way to go about that. But there's of course lots of others that are a little bit more complex, but they're all kind of variations on the 5 whys, right? So we're just kind of going at it in different ways. But that root cause analysis is hugely important, because you have to, if you're going in as a consultant, your reputation is based on solving the right problem.
How does one learn, and this isn't really meant to be a goofy question, how do you learn to ask good questions? I mean, the whys we can get, but how do you learn to ask a good question?
I think it's about coming at it from a point of genuine curiosity and interest. So if you're really listening, there's some really good books on questioning too. Warren Burger has a book. Warren Burger was the Supreme Court Justice. One would think he'd know how to ask a good question, right? So he has a book called, and I'm looking here, A More Beautiful Question, that is spectacular. And it talks a lot about how to ask that question, and as well as giving some examples of great questions. But it really is about genuine curiosity, as opposed to walking in thinking that you know something.
See, there you go.
Okay? You have to think that I don't know what's going on here. If you it's the same, by the way, it's the same thing as a new manager walking into an organization and deciding they know how to fix everything before they've ever asked anything. Okay.
In town.
Yeah, the new jerk in town. Exactly. Right. So but it is walking, it's a combination of confidence and humility and curiosity. So understanding that I don't know what's going on here. I only know what they have said is going on here.
Right.
So I have to take a look at what's underneath this, and I have to ask questions based on and listen to what they're actually saying, being able to listen between the lines, being able to read people. You know, emotional intelligence is hugely important in consulting.
Yeah. And being humble, I think, like you said, not needing, just because they called you in as a consultant, or you wear that moniker, that doesn't mean you know everything. You know some things, but you need to be humble enough to say, oh my gosh, could you tell me more?
Yeah, exactly. Humility is the state of being teachable. Okay, so that if you take it from that, as opposed to, so many people think humility is about humiliation, and that's not what it is.
Not what we're going for.
Not at all. That's not what we're going for here. But humility is the state of being teachable, and you add the confidence with that, which says, and I am able to be taught, right?
Uh-huh.
I am able to learn. I am able to then provide things, and I bring a lot of experience, but I have to learn what is actually going on here first. So learning, hugely important. What can I learn here first before I'm going to offer you solutions? Because you know a lot more about this problem than I do.
Right. So get out of your own way, pay attention,
Yeah.
be genuinely curious, be humble, learn.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is more difficult than I imagined, Jackee. I thought I just showed up and cashed the checks. Isn't that what
No, yeah. It would be nice if you could just walk in and say, go do this, this, and this, and absolutely pay me $1 million.
Ta-da! Yes, I'm all done.
Wouldn't that be great?
And I think sometimes folks have some illusion that that's what this is. I just become a consultant. I walk in, I tell you how to run your business. You write me.
Exactly right.
It's a beautiful.
Exactly right. And some of that comes from the fact that everything is so visible right now. We see, there's a lot of stuff in the popular press about how organizations are run based on the perspective of somebody who wrote the article, right?
Right.
And so you have a student or a person who is interested in being a consultant looking at that, and they say, oh, I could tell them how to do that. I could do that much better. Okay. Tell me you haven't ever thought that, Ernie. Certainly I have, I look at that and say, oh, I could help them turn that around. Okay.
I tell people that if you've ever run a business, if you've ever been in a leadership position and you've run an organization, it's easy to go into somebody else's house and point out the flaws. Yeah. I mean, we as individuals do that. I can come to your house and point out all the flaws. Why? Because I don't live there, so I see things you don't see. That doesn't make me the expert.
No, not only that, but while they look like flaws to you, they may be right in that order. That
exactly.
Area.
So we can't be judgmental.
Yeah.
Right. We need to be objective.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
We need to be objective and keep open. It's just complicated, Jackee. I thought this was much easier. Oh my goodness.
It's really complicated, but Ernie, it's really fun.
There is a fun factor here.
It is. If you're a learning junkie like I am, it is incredibly fun. Learning and creativity and being able to solve big problems. That's what turns me on, and that's the heart of the consultant.
Yeah, being genuinely interested in people, interested in ideas, be in learning mode, being open, right? And push the judgment back. Let's talk about the networking part, because you touched on this with LinkedIn, and I know you have some comments about LinkedIn. How important is the networking part of consulting?
Huge.
In general, general.
It's huge. It is ginormous. And depending upon if you want to go into a consulting organization or if you want to start your own, it's equally important. Okay, so if you want to go into an organization, then you're going to want to know the people who are in those organizations that you might want to be a part of. So you're going to want to network with them. And we call LinkedIn a networking device, and posting isn't really networking. Posting is kind of being visible, letting people know who you are. But networking is about making connections. It's about turning contacts. I have, a couple of thousand of people who are in my LinkedIn network. Okay. I have maybe a couple of hundred of them that are actually connections. Somebody that I have relationships with, right? So there's a big difference there. And networking is about turning contacts into connections. It's about turning them into relationships, so that people think of you when they need something. Okay, so if I'm doing, and it's about laying the groundwork beforehand. It's not about talking to somebody. Oh, I want to work for McKinsey, so I'm going to call them and I'm going to tell them I want to work for them, and then I'll get a job. That's not networking. Okay, it's about calling them and learning about who they are and what they do. Okay, it's making that connection. One of the most effective ways to make these connections right now that in this last year especially, that I found out, is to use the pandemic as your base of what you're talking about. What is it like to work in your organization now with this pandemic? How have things changed? Because that will tell you not only what's changed, but it'll tell you what happened before. It'll tell you what their job is like. It'll tell you what their frustrations are. It'll tell you what their joys are. It'll tell you all kinds of things, give you an idea of what it's like now for them in this environment. Because I will tell you, this next step is going to be different from what it's like now and what it's like before.
That's
You know,
true.
we don't know what's going to be next. So what you want to do is find out what it is like for them. What are they doing? How are they working? There's always the possibility then that where you can say, that is so fascinating. That is so interesting. How does one become a part of your organization? And you can ask that toward the end, after you've heard about that, after you've actually learned about it, because you're interested. Because the best way to, I've had people ask me, how do I be, I'm not a very interesting person. How do I do that? How can I be interesting to somebody? Well, it isn't about being interesting. It's about being interested. When you're networking, it's about being interested in the other person, asking those good questions, being genuinely curious and wanting to know about what they do and what their organization is like, how those things are going on. So when you're looking at joining an organization or you have a list, and it's never a good idea to put your eggs all in one basket if you're talking about consulting, that you only want to go to one organization. That's probably not going to work out. So you want to range, and then that networking piece is hugely important to consulting, because they're going to see that as a demonstration of your skill. Because you're going to be networking with clients after that. You're a part of this, so you're demonstrating to them a very specific skill as you're talking to them. If you're on your own, if you're developing your own firm, then what you want to do instead is to look at the type of clients that you want. Who would you want as a client? And so that networking is all about, I'm considering putting this consulting practice together, and I'm trying to identify what people need that I might be able to offer. And so I'm really interested in who you are and what your organization might need from a consultant. What would they be able to provide you? And so talking to people about that and being able to gauge their interest in terms of what they might do, and seeing, you're also going to see then is that a match for me as a client? Is that somebody I would want to work with? The joy I have in clients is that you can fire a client. You can't fire a boss.
I don't want to work for you anymore.
Yeah. And there's always an end to the project, right? So you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And even the most difficult projects, and you always learn something no matter how hard the project is. Sometimes even if the client is really difficult, you still learn a lot. But it's one of the things that gets you through that is that this too shall pass, right? You're going to get through this, and your reputation depends on you doing it well. And your next job depends on you doing it well.
Yeah, I think we learn far more from difficult situations than we do from easy ones. And although, and I think if you can change that perspective a little bit, saying, oh, this is really tough. I hate this. It's like, no, this is amazing because I'm going to learn so much.
So much.
This is going to be difficult.
Absolutely.
Yes, my skills are going to get stretched. I'm going to learn. This is awesome. That's a different perspective.
A whole different perspective, and it gives you more connections for for different concepts, how different concepts might be applied, and it stretches you in terms of how what I've known in the past might apply here. How do I need to tweak this? How do I need to change this? How does it need to morph in order to grow into this? Or what do I need to learn that's new? What else is going on in the environment or around here that I haven't seen before that I really need to figure out? So it's fun.
You have to get out and meet and talk to people. It's in entrepreneurship, when we're talking about launching a business or launching a product, before you do that, you should go talk to the folks you think might be interested in what you're going to do.
Oh, absolutely.
To find out, what do you think? Do you like this? And see if what you think they need is what they think they
really
want.
Yeah.
And so consulting similar when you're trying to get into it.
Yeah,
you need to talk to people to say, this is what I think, what do you think? And you can become an interesting person simply by asking questions.
That's right.
And making other people talk.
That's right. And the the other thing that I will tell you about that networking process, and that is the way that I launched my own business, was to go out there and network with people that I was interested in, and you know, and I didn't know any of them, by the way, when I started, and I reached out to them, and what happened during the course of these networking interviews is I'd have people say, you know, I don't have a job right now, but do you have a card, or do you have, how can I get in touch with you? Because I think I have this thing coming up that I'd really like to learn. Because if you're interested in them, they're also going to be interested in you. They're going to ask you what you do and how do you plan to go about this. And it was, and of course I had a background that I was able to tap into and say, well, I do this, and this is what I really love. And that made a difference. And it was fascinating to see how that evolved. And I will tell you that I truly believe that first year that I was doing those networking interviews and doing those initial projects, almost all of the clients I have today, I can trace back through referrals or through projects that they heard about to that original year, that's where it grew from.
Right. So I'm going to back you up just a second, because you touched on something that I want to expand on. Networking live events, which we haven't done that in so long. Oh my goodness, I can't wait to get out and do that again. Networking and live events. Sometimes folks have a misunderstanding that networking in a live event just means running around to everybody you can find and thrusting your card in their face. I network. Yeah, or collecting cards. I've got all these people that I
got a stack of cards this high, so I really networked well tonight.
I know I don't even remember. Tomorrow I won't know anyone. Talk about that. How should you conduct yourself in that sort of, you called them networking interviews, which was interesting. How do you conduct yourself?
Well, and I do, or coffee chats sometimes with one-on-one things. So that's my preferred way. Networking events, I think, are really important, especially with professional organizations, because professional organizations can be a real interesting place to network. And of course, in a university environment, you might have things like career fairs or those kinds of places where you might also do some networking and learn to get to know some of the organizations and that sort of thing. But when you go to an event that is for the purpose of networking, I have an attitude that I go in with, because I'm an introvert, and most people don't recognize that, but it's true. I act like an extrovert really, really well, but it's not easy. It isn't an easy thing for me. It's a learned activity. So one of the attitude that I go into a networking event with is what I call the attitude of the host.
Okay.
So I'm there to help people be successful and to help people do what they're supposed to do, because it's a networking event, right? So everybody's there, and I'm going to assume that everybody's feeling as uncomfortable as I am. So I want to help them feel more comfortable.
Oh my, this is good. I like it. Yes.
So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go around and I'm going to start talking to people in order to help them feel more comfortable so they don't feel out of place, all right, or whatever. But at the same time, I also have a bit of an agenda. I've done my research beforehand. I know who's going to be there. I know what kinds of things I'm looking for. They've got their little tags on, so I know what organizations they're from. So I'm going to make sure that I get the connections that I'm looking for. And then I want to conduct that one-on-one piece right there with that person in the same way that I would do it if I was alone with them. And I want to talk with them, and I want to connect. And I will tell you that if I get 3 or 4 really good connections where I feel like I would be comfortable calling this person afterwards because I feel like I've developed some kind of a relationship, I have a successful networking event. Not running around and picking up cards, because those people, if I run around picking up cards, how many of those people can I actually talk to afterwards?
Right. What is Jackie's rule on giving a card?
Oh, I will. Yeah, I give a card if usually I will give a card if they offer one. I will say, might I have one of your cards? And And usually they will.
Right.
And then if they give me one of theirs, they will often say, and can I have one of yours?
Right.
And so then I will give them that also.
Okay, but you
So
don't
I
instantly
want to request.
produce a card and thrust it out there. You have to establish
No.
a
Yeah.
need.
So
and,
yeah,
you know,
if I get their card, I have the power, right? Because I can now reach out to them.
right.
So, and then when I reach out to them, they'll get all my contact information anyway, because
Right.
I'm going to reach out for them. If I make 4 really good contacts, the next day I'm sending thank you notes. It was so nice to meet you.
Sometimes I'll play a game at an event. Because like yourself, you know, we've been doing this for a little while.
Yeah,
A little while. And I won't ask for the card, right? It's like a sales presentation type of thing. And I'll try to create such value or such interest they can't help themselves but to ask me for my card, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to produce it until they ask. And that's kind of a game.
Yeah.
Probably, evil spirited game, but nevertheless, because like you said, if the
It's a
card
challenge.
it's a challenge, you know,
Yeah.
can you present the value in such a fashion? They just have to have the information, right? Okay, so we're not thrusting out cards. We have to develop a relationship quickly, and then collect that card. And follow up. You mentioned follow up as being important.
I think it's hugely important, because what use is a networking event if you don't follow up, if you don't have something to do with it afterwards? You know,
Right.
it isn't just, this isn't a piece of time. Okay, I've networked. Yay, all done.
All done. I can
What
go
is
home
the
now.
purpose? Why are you there? You know,
Right.
if you're networking, the point is to develop this web of connections that you can tap into at some point in time for a particular reason. What is your reason? Why do you want this? Why do you want this person as a part of your network?
Right.
What is that for? And so being able to establish that, and to, in some ways it's a little bit like going out and making friends, right? So and it's, and they're business friends, and yes, it's more instrumental than it is maybe relational in some ways, but the fact is that it's about creating a connection where you feel some kind of warmth between the two of you, so that you say, boy, the other term that I sometimes use is that engaging for impact. So if I engage them in a way that together we can make some kind of an impact, that is pretty cool. That's a great way to go forward in terms of this relationship.
Yeah, that's amazing. Jackee, we could talk for hours, but we can't because we're on a bit of a schedule here. So I have to call time here. Oh, my goodness, I have to have you back. The networking facet of this just can go on for
a long time. Yeah.
Oh my gracious. So thank you so much for being a great guest. I appreciate you being on the Silvers Connection. One final shot coming from Jackee. Words of wisdom to those desiring to be a consultant. What would be the final piece?
Oh, pay attention to connections. Pay attention to what you're doing. Pay attention to who you are, what energizes you, and help that to know what you then can provide somebody else. Because if you're energized, if you're feeling creative and innovative, then that's something you can translate to somebody else and begin to make connections and build off that.
Yeah. Be genuinely interested in people. I like that part too. All right. That's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Silvers Connection. Jackee, we're going to have you back. That's all there is to it.
Thank you very much.
All righty. And we'll be finished. Thank you.
All right.